Let's be honest, there's no guidebook when it comes to relationships. So we end up having to stumble through life trying to figure things out for ourselves. What if there was a podcast that found the answers for you, that provided insight to build a successful relationship and ultimately find the companionship you've always hoped for? Welcome to the Girls Ask Guys show, where we answer the questions most people are afraid to ask when it comes to lessons in life and love. It's time to master this thing called life together with your hosts, John and Ashley.
And welcome back, everybody. Today we have a guest with us. He's listened to the show and requested to be on. And we're going to be talking a little bit about what he is familiar with. He's not a doctor, but he does have a better in-depth understanding of evolutionary psychology than I do. And coming from the world that I'm familiar with, I've looked at evolutionary psychology. I have used a little bit of what they say, but I have not gone as far in depth and used it in my own dating life as much as David has. So with that, we want to welcome David to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys.
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing really well. You guys surviving this coronavirus?
Of course.
Just barely. I think I have about another 2.5 hours and my sanity is going to leave.
Luckily I went outside and took a long walk, so I'm good today.
Go outside, people. Get some sunlight. Unfortunately, if you live where I live, it's rainy as shit, but you know what, guys? Turn on your lights and just into hope. That's what I've been doing these days. I've actually lost a lot of weight because I'm not eating as much because I don't feel like cooking. So there's that.
Yeah, I think I've done enough world trips with Google Maps.
Actually, I'm in the same boat as you. I would say the first month of quarantine, I started to gain weight because I was just Netflix and chilling and just eating food. And then I started to see like a little bit of love handles growing. And I was like, I got to turn this around. So I started doing meal prep and, drinking green juice.
No.
And I've lost like 10 pounds.
I love to cook. I love cooking. I was like, I'm so excited. I'm going to become freaking Gordon Ramsay. And then like after day 40, I was like, I'm done cooking. I never want to see food again. I hate all this shit. And I've just been literally eating like 130 calorie bags of popcorn every day. And it's working.
Sounds like a good life to me.
Yeah, I do. Well, not so much anymore because usually I'm just so wrapped up with everything else that we have going on that I run to the store, I get like the bare essentials, and I come right back. I like to cook. It's just, I have not.
Just not in the mood. I think that's the one thing that's happening is people are like, there's only so many fucking shows I can watch. There's only so much YouTube I can watch. There's only so many websites I can go to. You know what I mean? So people are now starting to get that stir crazy thing happening. But luckily everything's opening up at 50%, 25% if you live in the backwoods like John. And so we're able to kind of start walking around, doing things. Obviously still wearing masks, protect yourselves. And just kind of, just get out there, get some sunlight. If you live in an apartment, I'm sorry. But maybe take a walk up and down the stairs, ride the elevator or something. I don't know, but do something. Get your ass out of the house because if not,
work
you're
on
going to
your
lose your
immune
mind.
system is most important, right? Eat some healthy foods, get some vitamin D supplements, stuff like that.
Yeah. And actually, vitamin D has been underestimated. There's quite a few research studies that came out and said that vitamin D actually does a lot for you.
Yeah, buy some, take some too. You can also ingest it, guys. You can here's the thing: get some vitamins in you. Stop eating the ramen because it takes 3 minutes. Have like a shake that takes 3 minutes. I'm not a big fan of smoothies. I think they're thick and gross. But I do have a nice concoction of drugs that I take every day to keep my body healthy, and not just the ones that cause withdrawal. I take vitamins.
Yeah, I do the multivitamins. I hate the pills. So everything I have is the gummies.
You take the gummies, don't you?
Yes.
Oh, child.
Yes.
Vitamin C gummies are where it's at.
Ugh. I'm popping pills, dude, every day.
I can't
B12
do
shots
the horse.
To the fucking veins, man.
No, military, they kind of ruined the whole.
You know those giant vitamin E and castor oil pills? I love them. Yeah. They're my favorite.
I can't do the big old horse pills.
I love it, man. I like the taste of vitamins.
Well, yeah,
I like that.
Go down
gummies
too, right?
So delicious. No, not the gummies. I like that herbal, I'm from the ground taste. I like that dirt taste that vitamins have. The gummies just taste like candy, and then I'm just going to eat them by the handful. And next thing you know, my bones are just calcified. Yeah, it's just not good. It's not a good look for me. So we are here with David, right?
Yes, David.
Okay. And David
David,
is.
it doesn't matter.
All right, David. We're here with David, and he loves evolutionary psychology. Apparently, he's listened to a lot of our show, to the point where we've noticed our number. Like he's listened to a lot of it, and this is really fun for us because usually people who request to be on the show just kind of want to like show their prowess off, and they're like, "Hey, listen, I'm an expert at something," when really they're not. But to hear somebody who's like, "Hey, listen, I like your show. I want to be on it, and I want to bring a different perspective to your audience," is amazing. So thank you for coming on, man. That's freaking awesome. And thanks for listening. This is kind of my Beyonce moment, I will say, because I feel awesome about this, but that's just my ego. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I wanted to come on and just try and give as much value as I can for both men and women, because for me personally, this idea of evolutionary psychology expanded a lot of ideas I had, and it also made me realize issues that I had in my past relationships. And I just saw dots connect. Like, now things are making so much more sense now. Like, this is why this happened. This is why things started to work for me. This is why things didn't work for me, and all different types of relationships that I had. So things will just like clear out and make so much more sense for you if you kind of just go into this with an open mind and understand the foundation of evolutionary psychology.
Yeah.
So then let's begin there. What is the foundation?
Okay. So just to say, I want to say, the reference that I'm going to be using is the best book on this. So I'm going to recommend the book first. It's called Sex at Dawn by Dr. Christopher Ryan and his wife, Casilda Jetha. They are PhDs in psychology. And what they did with this book is essentially take an accumulation of data going all the way back from Charles Darwin up to modern evolutionary psychologists, and try to understand the dating, marriage, and sex aspects from hunter and gatherer tribes. And here's the foundation, because you were asking about that, Ashley. So this is a really interesting fact. Human fossil records of Homo sapiens goes back to 300,000 years ago. And it's an honest debate about how far back modern society really goes back. I mean, we found evidence of agriculture only about 10,000 years ago. So now if we're comparing modern society of less than 10,000 years versus 300,000 years of human history on this planet, I would say that the way we lived as hunter-gatherers, as cavemen, as primates, has much more influence on us today than the modern world and the modern society and our modern idea of ethics and morals.
Just knowing from my own background with it, I can agree with that up to like a certain point.
Sure.
I mean, I can't say that. And that's one of the things that I like about having people on the show is, while we may be able to get somebody 50% of or 80% of the way there, information like this could actually get somebody the rest of the way. So I'm not saying that we have all the answers or anything, but with that, I can agree with it up to a point, with especially how we select each other as far as friends, neighbors, enemies, and stuff like that.
Right. So as we go throughout the podcast, I might say the word, generally speaking, men are attracted to this, or women are attracted to this, and here's why. Yeah. When I say that, it's not a blanket statement to say 100% of all men are like this, 100% of all women are like this. It's just like a general idea of, maybe you could say, I remember in college I studied statistics and they talked about correlations, and I don't remember the exact percentage, but it was somewhere around like a correlation is considered around maybe like 65% or something like that. So that's still leaving a third of that doesn't necessarily fall into that category. And it could even be smaller than 65%. So I'm going to be generalizing a lot. I'm not blanket stating all men and women like this. And it's not to say that men and women in the modern world can't make their own decisions. But the important idea to remember is just that just as our facial features are decided by our genetics, a lot of our subconscious behavior and our sexual desire and stuff like that is also passed down from generation to generation.
Well, it's generation to generation. It's also, you have your, just your general surroundings are also going to fit into that as well. Doing as much travel as I have, you have a culture over in Europe. So it's like not just genetics, but also the society that you grow up in. They have a different socio norm than we have over here in the U.S.
But go ahead.
it's always brought up a big conundrum of why we do the things we do. Obviously, evolutionary psychology, when we think about it, yeah, of course, we have, number one, I said this earlier, evolutionary psychology usually comes down to one thing, and that's survival. The reason that we've made it this long is because we wanted to survive a certain way. So obviously when we talk about dating, and we think about the terms of dating and survival of dating is literally reproducing. And I think the book you're referencing, if I'm not mistaken, I read like 11 pages on it, before you, I did. I read like 11 pages on it before you showed up. And I believe I read a comment that was like, it seems like what people are trying to do is, instead of break down the, and kind of disprove the evolutionary psychology, what they're trying to do is make it seem that men and women aren't so different after all. And that at the end of the day, just because you're a man, just because you're a woman, it doesn't mean you're not human. You know what I mean? And that's what I really, really enjoy about the concept of survival and evolutionary psychology, because I always chalk it up to, we all kind of want three things out of life. We want to be loved, we want to love, and we want to have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, just as you were saying, in this book, they really talked about how both men and women, our main goal is essentially to produce the highest quality genetic offspring. And that's not to say that can completely controls our psychology with the dating, marriage, and sex, but that was a huge influence back in our days of being hunter-gatherer tribes, where our survival wasn't as guaranteed as today. I mean, we have our grocery stores and everything's so easy, but I mean, back then they had to struggle 24/7 for their survival. It was never guaranteed.
Right. That's really where my background with it, that's really where it kind of stops. Because you take a look at hunter-gatherers and let's just call it the caveman era. The woman wanted a physically strong person, because women, in the cave, they made the fire, they looked after the kids. The guy would go out and he would hunt and gather, but he would also protect them. So he guaranteed her survival and her child's survival from being attacked.
Right.
And he also wanted the best looking female, because that meant that his genetics or his genes would also more than likely be as beautiful as possible, which meant they would be selected for the next generation. And that kind of resonated with me, and it kind of changed my perspective on things. I was like, okay, even with that, I also put in the caveat, my version of a physical version of a 10 is going to be different than your version of a 10.
Of course, yeah.
And it kind of goes to the idea that strength and beauty equals power. I think that's one of the other things. And when it comes to survival, the strongest survive. So if you have that strong man, that brute force, AAA alpha male with that gorgeous woman with the perfect figure, the childbearing hips, who also knows how to take care of a house and keep a fire going and knows how to roast a saber-toothed tiger, you have what you call, like a true power dynamic, and that family can't be touched because they are the alpha in everything. And I think and I don't think that's too far off from what's today. Like John said, your version of a 10 is not the same as his, which is true. But at the same time, we're still kind of looking for the person who is going to bring us the best power dynamic as a couple. You're not necessarily looking for the person who can go fucking, hit a tiger with a club and kill it. You're looking for the person who can expand your mind. You're looking for the person who you can grow something with, that isn't necessarily a fire.
Well, today I would say it's not all about brute strength, but it's also about intelligence. Because we looked at it, brute strength, Bill Gates would not survive. He'd be dead.
Nope.
But he's highly intelligent, so that's his version of a brute strength, and that's what his wife was attracted to. If it wasn't for, I don't know if she could have said, oh, he's worth a couple billion. There's some brute strength right there.
Right, exactly. And that's the cool thing, is that power dynamics have not changed. The idea of having a power couple has not changed. That's why people like Jay-Z and Beyonce get married. Whether they actually love each other or not, I don't think none of us will ever know, because we're not them. But what we do know is they know when they combine forces, they created a power dynamic that is untouchable in that industry of theirs.
Yeah.
And John, you were just saying about intelligence. That was really interesting, because actually back then, in order to be like that really top tier caste in the tribal society of being that hunter and gatherer warrior, you actually had to have intelligence. You couldn't be some dimwit guy who's going to go sneak up on a giant, as Ashley said, saber-toothed tiger or whatever type of big game they're hunting. I mean, you really had to be smart. You ask any modern hunter who tries to hunt with a bow and arrow. That's kind of a big thing going on right now in the hunting world, is rather than using a rifle, to use a bow and arrow. And they talk about how ridiculously hard it is, how you have to be smart. You have to know where the wind is blowing so that the animal doesn't smell it. All these different factors that go into it, that you couldn't be one of those top tier warrior hunter gatherers with being a dimwit, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's like the organizational leadership, because people respond more. And we're seeing this more and more, especially more in the tech industry, like Google. Everybody wants to work with Google or work at Google because it's very personalized. Their management structure is very charismatic compared to more of the industry that I work in, where just you're going to do what we say because I outrank you. Mm-hmm. And people respond more to the personalized, charismatic type leadership styles than that very regimented type structure. Because even with, let's say, everything comes with status. So industry that I work in, it's all about status. The more you make, the more shiny shit you wear on your collar, the more exploitive you can be compared to Google. And you could walk right past the senior vice president of some department and not even know it, because they really don't care about status symbols.
So I just wanted to jump in real quick. There's this really interesting study they did about mice. This is about genetic memory and how our ancestors lived and how their psychology is passed down today. So they did this really cool study where they took the first generation of mice, and what they would do is bring out a scent or a strong smell. Like, let's just take lavender oil, for example. So what they would do is these mice would smell the lavender oil, and then the scientists would apply a light electric shock to the mice. And it wasn't, it didn't kill them, but it was supposed to be painful. And what they found is even multiple generations down after not doing that, the offspring of those mice remembered when a lavender smell was presented, they ran away and hid. And you can see that with cows on a pasture that have an electric fence. If they bump into that electric fence, their offspring knows not to go to that fence. So there's this idea that psychology and memories actually pass down through our genetics. It's not just physical features.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of like, when you think about that, the best way to explain it is muscle memory. I mean, and it's easy to say, I can see this happening. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense that our genetics are just about looks. I mean, we talk about brain chemistry. We even talk about, and to a really, really lesser extent, we even talk about, our handedness, what hand we are. So the idea of memory happening within genetics to me is just totally plausible and makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on this one biological factor, right? So to lay down the foundation of the psychology behind it. So as you guys know, a woman, her pregnancy term is for 9 months. So naturally you would say women have to be more picky when it comes to choosing a mate, while a male, as you know, can have multiple offspring really quickly, or he can impregnate multiple women in a very short amount of time. Now, I don't want to condone what this man did, but do you guys know who Genghis Khan is, right?
Oh, yeah.
He was the emperor of the Mongolian Empire in the 12th century, who basically, he united the tribes across Asia, but he also basically took that army and went to tribes and said, if you don't join me, then we're going to kill you all. So those who didn't join his empire basically got raped and slaughtered. And now today in Asia, millions of people in Asia can trace their genetics back to Genghis Khan because the amount of offspring he had. So the only reason I'm bringing this up is to show you the stark contrast between the amount of offspring a man can create versus the amount a woman can have. I mean, a woman is on that TLC channel and on some funny show about her having 12 children because it's a huge deal. But Genghis Khan probably had in his lifetime hundreds, if not thousands, of offspring. So I'm not morally condoning what he did, because let's face it, it was probably mostly rape. But I just wanted to just show the biological difference of most males, even in modern day, you'll see they will take any woman who's willing to mate with them. I'm just speaking about the general men out there, right? I'm not saying, all men, but just generally speaking, versus women now are very picky. And I don't think anyone, if any males are out there trying to say women but shouldn't be so picky, tell them to screw off, because your biology and your psychology is telling you to pick the best guy out there. So never ever listen to anyone if they're telling you not to be picky, because that's how you're supposed to be.
Right. That goes back to one of the things that I pointed out, I think it was a couple episodes back. If you understand what people are looking for as far as relationships are concerned, in general, most women are looking for long-term relationships.
Mm-hmm,
and
of course.
It's pretty much how we're conditioned. We look at the Disney movies and all the rom-com movies. In general, the woman is always looking for a long-term relationship. The guy really doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
Most guys are looking for that short-term, get in, have fun, get out.
Right.
And that's, again, in general.
Yeah, I would say that. But I would also say that I think a lot of those studies are kind of biased in the way where men weren't always taught to be honest about what they want. So they were always taught to kind of play it cool, and while it may be evolutionary, I think a lot of men also look for those same things. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's a study that proves, even when we talk about promiscuity, it's not that different between sexes when it comes to anything like as far as looking for a long-term. Most people want to be loved, I think, and I'm not going to say you're a sociopath if you don't want to, because you might not be. You might not be interesting to you, but I think most people want that security as far as love is concerned. I think for men it was more guaranteed. For women, if you didn't act a certain way, you weren't going to be able to obtain that.
Well, that goes to how, again, in general, how people enter into a relationship. The guy that we were talking about the other day, the one that had the Lamborghini, he's trying to impress with money and status. But also with women, if you ask them a direct question, so what's going on? I'm okay. And really what she wants to do is rip your throat out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really how we are kind of taught by society and the rules that we kind of abide by.
I think a lot of the rules we have, though, haven't changed obviously they've changed a lot as far as laws are concerned, but social rules, I don't think they're really all that different as they've ever been. I think it's kind of understood that men are supposed to be the strong ones, women are supposed to be the ones who take care of people. Now, obviously, dynamics change based on individual rights, because there's plenty of women who go out and work who have stay-at-home husbands, you know what I mean? But I don't really think evolutionarily anything has changed as far as the norms. Maybe expectations have changed, but I don't think norms have changed.
I think the acceptance has changed. Like we look at the 1950s, you were scorned so much as a man or a woman if you had a divorce or sex outside of marriage, pregnancy outside of marriage. But nowadays, I think we're super open in 2020. It's actually super normal. Your best friend tells you, "Oh, I have an open relationship with my girlfriend. I'm polyamorous. I have sex with a lot of different people, or I'm monogamous." Everyone's very accepting.
Nobody cares anymore.
Of what you do. Yeah, no one cares anymore. I actually really like that. I think that's a really good direction we're going.
Yeah,
it's good for several reasons. It's good, number one, because people shouldn't. I believe there's a fair amount of shame people should have. Don't get me wrong. Like I do enjoy a little bit of shame. I think it makes things fun and dirty and sexy. But also, I do believe that the idea of people being open about what they want, people not being ashamed of who they are, it just makes life easier.
Well, it's just, I would say even back in the, let's just go back to the 1910, 1920, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all that time, even though there was like a social shame,
that shit was still happening.
It was still happening.
It was still happening.
Yeah,
and not
it was
only
still
was
happening. It's just that nobody talked about it.
Right. And not only that, they were doing that shit at music festivals, rolling around in the mud, doing it with everybody. And it was this quote unquote taboo thing. But when we talk about adultery, we talk about the idea of sex, swingers and all these things. They aren't fucking new concepts, man. They're just, people are now what? I don't care if you know. Yeah, right? Dude, Roman emperors and shit were disgusting people, man. And I know we've all seen Year One. That stuff's not wrong. Sodom and Gomorrah, all that stuff happened. There were really Greek men and, Greek parties were just disgusting and kind of I'd go to one probably. But the thing is, it's just not, like you said, acceptance. I don't think it's changed technically. And I think the people who still have those quote unquote morals are the same people who would commit adultery in secret.
I also think there's an element to it where people we're just like, why are we covering this up if this is what we are all doing?
Right? I'm so sick of lying.
Yeah.
They actually referenced in Sex and Dawn how even tribes, even like within the most recent, like last century or two that they found, way out in the Amazon or like other parts of Asia where they hadn't been contacted by modern day, that these people who would go there, they would find that they did have like sex and orgies and like, intermarriage, relationships. And these are people who didn't have contact with the outside world. So it's like supernatural, I would say.
I don't know if you guys remember the first time you had sex, but I was like, wow, if I could do this with one person, what would it feel like with two? Like, to me, that's evolutionary thinking right there, in the way where like, all right, so this is real cool. Like, what if we tried this double? Would it be better for me or worse? And then obviously you learn that it's better, so you continue that way. And I think, no, I'm kidding, guys. Like, monogamy all the way. Team Ashley. But seriously, when you think about it, the question is, do you consider this to be taboo? No, I think we're just like very open about sex now. We're just kind of in a sex positive world where it's like, hey, screw that person. I do believe, like I said, we should have some shame in this. Like, I don't want to hear about it. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, I don't want to see you on a collar walking around like a fucking puppy. I think it's none of my business and I don't want to see it. But if you want to do that in your home and you want to chase the ball in I watched this pet play documentary and it was the strangest fucking thing I've ever seen.
I've seen that. That's kind of strange. And
I'm not kink shaming in the way where I think it's like, ew, never, don't do it.
It's just not my cup of tea.
Right. I don't want to fucking see it, man. Like, if I see a man walking down the street like a dog, I'm going to want to kick him. And it's because it's weird. It's just what it is. Yeah. Like, keep it to yourself. And I think that's kind of where we're going with society is we don't give a shit who you sleep with. Just like, don't involve us, man.
Yeah, keep the PDA down to a minimum, right?
Like, come on. Like, nobody needs to know how you feel about these things. It's nobody's business but yours and God's.
Yeah.
When it comes down to what you guys were just talking about a minute ago about like cheating in a serious committed relationship, I've came up with something I'm going to call the jelly donut theory. And I don't morally condone cheating whatsoever, but what I've come up with the idea is basically you followed me or Ashley or John around with a stick over our head that dangles down a jelly donut. Even though right now I'm on a diet, I swear, if the right conditions come up and if it's just dangling in front of my face 24/7, if the right time comes where I'm hungry, the right impulses come, the right situation comes, and I'm like, the jelly donut's looking so good. Eventually, depending on the person's character and their willpower to overcome their own biological subconscious impulses, may probably go for that jelly donut at some point if the right circumstances go for. So I feel like a man could have the perfect wife. She's supportive, she's loving, she's a powerful woman in every aspect. And she could be sexy, everything a man wants. But I feel like if he's a great guy, he's going to have women attracted to him all the time, and the opportunity is going to be presenting itself. And I feel like his biology is pushing him to have sex with as many mates and pass his genes on. So once again, I'm not condoning men or women cheating, but I would just say that biological and psychological impulse is always pushing both sexes. And it's like that jelly donut idea of it's dangling in front of your face if that opportunity's there. And eventually, if the right circumstances come all together in a big accumulation, eventually you may break and cheat on your significant other.
Yeah, no, I think if you have the perfect partner, that opportunity never presents itself. You don't even see the jelly donut because you have tunnel vision as to where you're going. What I think you're saying is that people give in to temptation if the situation is right, which is true, but if you're smart, you move the temptation out. So if somebody's dangling a jelly donut and I'm on a diet, I'm going to tell that person, get the fuck away from me.
Well, I was just saying, it's like, let's say it's permanently there, like if you're an attractive guy, you're going to naturally have women hitting on you left and right, even if you have a good partner,
Well, I think the thing that goes along with that is I delved into this quite heavily. The number one reason for divorce comes down to really one of two things. Even though what is actually listed on the forms is like finance, religion, children, family structures, stuff like that. It comes down to Actually, I would move it up. Bad sex.
Bad sex.
That's
bad communication.
Which actually
Same
comes
thing.
from bad communication.
Same
Because
thing. Bad
you
sex,
look
bad
at
communication.
because if you're going through a really messy divorce, you're not going to go up in front of the judge and the judge says, "Okay, so why should I dissolve this union?" And he looks over at her or she looks over at him with that powerful lawyer standing next to him and goes, "They're bad in bed."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't want to say that out loud.
Yeah, you just lost your entire case right there.
There's no alimony for you. You might get your divorce. No alimony.
So what they do, and there's no box to check that just says they're bad sex. It's not there. And that can actually be validated by other types of studies where 64% of all women will end a relationship just dating over a bad kiss compared to guys who will, I think we're down to like 40% or something like that.
I don't think guys notice as much.
No, they don't. But if you have that deep emotional connection and you have the communication is there, then really the temptation never shows. But if it's not there, I can see exactly if all the stars align and the planets are coming together. Yeah, they're going to give into that temptation. Why do we have so many movie stars caught cheating? Because they're gone for 9 months training and filming and everything, and they don't see each other. So, of course, there's no communication.
Not only that, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go for it.
I was just going to say that I feel like a lot of people that I know that are in serious relationships right now, they move it forward too quickly. Like you guys know the term cohabitation, which means you live together with your significant other in the same apartment or house or whatever.
Yeah.
I know people that jump into that way too quick. Like you should get to know the person for a significant period of time before moving together. Then when you move together, then you should take a lot of time before you decide to propose to that person.
Yeah, because I think over in Europe, the average dating time before somebody gets married is 3 years. Here in the United States, we average about 3 months.
I was going to say like a month maybe. Because I think there's a thing where we confuse the idea of talking a lot with bonding. So you can talk with someone for 50 hours a week, and what you think is an emotional connection is really just a budding resentment.
Yeah, there's a difference between having a conversation and then there's also the conversations. And if you don't know what you're looking for, your conversations are just kind of like flippant. You're talking about surface level stuff, and you never actually, what kind of relationship do you want? Well, I would like a long-term relationship. Okay, well, how do you see the roles? And eventually you get down into, you're talking about the core of what this is going to look like. And sometimes people, they never even have that. I've talked to people who have been married for, how long has that couple been? I think 52 years. They've never actually, he never knew.
Hell, after 52 years, who gives a shit? I mean, we're stuck in this.
Yeah, but there were still things that they just do not talk about, period. I mean, it drives them up the wall, and it's almost led to several divorces or breakups. But even then, it's still that topic that they just do not talk about.
Which is ludicrous to me, but that's old school relationship shit, you know what I mean? Like, that's how our
passed
grandparents
on.
did it.
And according Yeah, because if anybody was brought up in that family, they're going to learn those traits, and they're going to keep doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in our generation have a lot of trouble opening up and being vulnerable with their partner and sharing, past traumas and all these things, their deepest feelings about their family, their friends, their life, and the things that are going on. I feel like people have a really hard time opening up and discussing like really serious, deep topics that are meaningful to them with their partner.
Right. And actually, myself and Ashley were talking about that before the show, because I got a question in, and it's probably going to become a topic of a show, as to somebody actually asked, well, if you're so good, why are you still single? And it was that right there, because people don't like opening up, and they are so reserved, and they have those walls. But once I breach those walls and they start having those types of conversations, the feelings can become very intense and they can come very quickly, and it scares them. It's like a literal, they get scared. They don't understand it. So they self-sabotage, or they like, I can't do this because what am I experiencing here?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like, you know how Ashley not that long ago was talking about Beyonce and Jay-Z? Like, for me personally, even though I do have women that are interested in me right now, I choose to remain single because I want that power woman. I want that power couple. I want to screen women to make sure that we're going to have right chemistry, that we're just going to really like come together as that power couple and really rock it. I don't really want to invest time and energy into a relationship that I can feel within the first few dates is not going to work out.
Right. Yeah, that comes from that filtering and setting the boundaries.
Exactly. Yeah. So before we go too much off, I just wanted to touch on one more evolutionary psychology topic, because this has been a really fun conversation, just talking about dating in general. But I wanted to get your guys' opinion on this about, and I know, John, you were talking about it not that long ago. We were kind of talking about how women in general, I'm not doing a blanket statement, but a lot of women are attracted to men with a certain amount of status and power. And it doesn't even have to be a global status or power, right? It can be within your own community. Like, I want to give a really wonderful example. I told you guys I live out in Pennsylvania, and our biggest college here is Penn State University. It's one of the Big Ten football colleges, and the whole community is totally surrounded with their football games and who's on the team and how the season's doing and everything. And it's so funny. I've spent a lot of time there. I have a lot of friends who went to school there. For me, it's almost like a second home there, right? And if you're the quarterback on that team, you are literally a celebrity there. Like, every kid who goes there, it's 50,000 undergrads there.
Yeah, there's only one quarterback.
Right. They don't know who the president of the school is, though. There's only one president of the university of the whole school. They don't know who it is, but they know who the quarterback of the football team is. They know who the wide receivers are. And I guarantee you we could find that guy's Instagram right now and send him a message. Hey, what's your dating life like? He would probably be like, my Instagram DMs are blowing up 24/7. Right. Unless he's doing bad that season, then throwing a lot of bad passes, right? I have the story of a friend who went there. He was in a serious relationship with this girl, and he's standing in line for like the waffle shop or some restaurant. And he told me that they're standing in line because there's a long line in the mornings on Sundays. And all of a sudden, the quarterback of the football team shows up. And not only did his girlfriend, but like every girl in line, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I don't know what his name was, but the captain of the football team, the quarterback of the football team is here. And he told me he just got so mad because he's just so jealous of, like, come on, I'm your boyfriend and you're squealing over the quarterback of the football team. Anyway, so I was just bringing it back to the reason why I feel that is, I was just giving an example, and I have one more example I'll bring up in a minute, but I wanted to say the reason why that is simply because having some sort of status back in our hunter-gatherer tribe days basically meant you had good genetics. Like, you couldn't be of high status unless you had good genetics, and good genetics included, good physical appearance, which would explain why women just prefer men with a nice physique. It prefers why women like men who have good character and are well liked by the people around them, because that's something you needed to have to be high status, to be one of those like hunter-gatherer warriors who was kind of high status within the tribe. And you had to have good leadership skills, which is something that I feel women do have an attraction towards of men who have good leadership skills, communication skills, and all these things that women do really appreciate about men today. These are some things that were actually cues for good genetics, because nowadays, you can make a lot of money, have a big business. You can be the CEO, but you could be like this fat slob who's the only thing that you're good at is making money and bossing people around, but you don't know all these other aspects. You don't have a good physique. You're not that smart in other aspects of life. You don't have good communication skills or whatever, all these other aspects that women would normally find attractive.
I would actually take that to, or modernize it just a little bit. And this comes from working in the modeling industry and the entertainment type industry, that people like things that are unique and prestigious. The more unique and the more prestigious it is, the more people are attracted to it. You'd show somebody the difference between a Ford Fiesta and a Ferrari. Which one would you like to drive?
Yeah, you don't even have to know about cars, right?
Yeah, this one looks better. It's got a much higher price tag on it, and it's got all these features and speed and everything else. It's more unique than this car over here because everybody has this car, but nobody has this one.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, and that kind of goes along with why I kind of lean towards fashion as to how to show somebody your personality. Because the more unique you look, the more you can separate yourself from the crowd, the more prestigious you are.
Mm-hmm.
And now you just have to show all that other stuff. Your communication skills, your leadership skills, your problem-solving abilities, and things like that.
Yeah, another great example I would give to that is, you guys know who Post Malone is, right?
Yeah, the artist.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's like a modern rap artist, music artist. I do like some of his songs, and I actually think he has a really funny, great personality if you watch some of his interviews. But if you look at pictures of him, he's like the farthest thing from the traditional good-looking man, right? He's kind of a little bit chubby. He looks a little bit rednecky, and he, I don't know, like, I just think most people would agree that he's not your perfect model with the chiseled jaw, the nice hair, or the nice skin. He's just the farthest thing from that. But if you go to his Instagram and go like find a photo where it's just him, maybe just him taking a selfie in the mirror or something, just go through and read the comments on all of these different photos. It's filled with a lot of attractive women that are like, please have my baby. Please check your DMs. I love you, baby. You're so sexy. Or girls tagging their... Yeah, so it's so strange because I'm like, he clearly doesn't really have good genetics, at least in terms of his physical appearance, but he has such a huge status, in society.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just status, it's confidence too. There's I mean, you can take the ugliest rapper alive, and honestly, what it comes down to, aside from money, let's be honest, I'd say the confidence that people have, because even the ugliest looking people on TV have some sort of like, I don't know how they do it, and it's editing obviously, but they're always able to capture a very good photo of them. And like I said, it's all because of confidence, and that confidence will bring you so much farther. The only difference between Post Malone and somebody who's just as talented sitting at home and not pursuing their dreams is confidence and knowing, and that confidence, whether it's a man or a woman, is sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah, confidence is sexy, right?
And there's all kinds of people out there, even Kevin James. You take a look at, he's not the model type person that you would see as having lots of people surround him, but he has a certain air of confidence about him, and being able to just step up and take on any kind of situation, that's attractive. Mm-hmm. People don't want the person that's going to fade into the background and just blend in. That's just not something that they're attracted to. They want somebody that's going to be able to show that they can step up and they can handle different situations appropriately.
Right. There's even evidence of being a risk taker was actually an attractive quality, generally speaking, that women look for in men. Like, let's say a guy who just rides his motorcycle around with no helmet or something, which is obviously dumb. Never do that.
Stupid.
But, it's seen as an attractive quality to some women because, why? It's because if you took risks, not only in modern day, but even in our hunter-gatherer days, you were most likely going to die if you weren't sly about it, if you weren't talented about what you were doing. If you took a risk back then, you were either, killed or exiled from your tribe. And if you were ever exiled from your tribe and community, either as a man or a woman, your chances of survival were slim. So, men who also go outside the social norms, like let's just say there's certain things that society might not approve of. The bad boy, the rebel, that was seen as a very attractive quality because back then in our hunter-gatherer tribe days, you would be exiled or killed if you went outside the mainstream of what the tribe wanted you to do and to believe and to look and all those things, right?
Right. And that comes true with just about everything. It's like my own lifestyle. I would do skydiving, motorcycle racing, rock climbing, scuba diving, underwater cave diving. I mean, I would
all those things raise your testosterone, by the way, which will give off pheromones and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah. And then you take a look at how I incorporated how I dress. I don't dress like everybody else with just regular jeans and t-shirt. No, it's elevated. But you don't have to be like a famous movie star or anything else in order to attract somebody. Just go to a club. And if you can handle what is going on inside that club and not acting like everybody else is getting drunk and they're just stumbling over each other. But if you can calmly walk through that club and handle every little situation appropriately, it's going to be considered as attractive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say that, like, you know how we were talking about personal development and dating coaches and stuff like that in the past? Well, honestly, just working on yourself in the self-improvement world and a little bit of fashion, or just knowing a little bit of techniques about how to talk to women, how to approach women without being a douche or rude or whatever. Just that little bit of working on yourself brings you up levels amongst the general pool of men out there. You know, like if you go out to a nightclub, I would say there's like 30% of the guys who are afraid, standing in the corner, just sipping on their beer, looking out at the dance floor. Yes. Just having the confidence to go up and say hello to a girl or just open with a funny joke makes you like levels above all the other guys out there, right?
Right. Well, Ashley is so familiar with this opener, but I can walk up and I just ask them, what kind of drink is that? And they would tell me, okay, is it any good? Why do you like it? And compared to everybody else that's coming up and you want a drink? Sure, keep it coming. Or the person that, hey, how you doing? Okay, well, she already knows what's going on, so instantly her wall is going up, the guards are coming up. Okay, I'm going to have to go through this yet again with somebody else I have no interest in. But I'm walking up and I'm just asking them, what kind of drink is that? Why do you like it? Is it any good? Should I get one? Out of curiosity, what do you do? So the guards are not there. And everything just seems very natural. Everything just kind of flows. The next thing they know is like, how did we get here? I asked you what kind of drink you liked.
Yeah, most men are so afraid to break out of their own shell of fear and contraction that just honestly going up and just being humorous and being open and free, she'll be able to sense your vibe of just being like kind of free, open, humorous, and not taking things so seriously that just brings you levels above just like the average Joe Schmo hiding behind the wall, sipping on his beer, right?
Right. And the same thing works for women as well. It's becoming less and less, but they are not being shunned as much for actually going up and talking and trying to start something with a guy. That it's slowly coming down. Now some of them, they're like on way over the extremes. They're just like, instead of like walking into the pool, they're doing cannonballs from the 50-foot platform, which is kind of jarring. But they're able to do it now more than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, without being shamed for doing it. You still have the whole PDA thing where, we know what you're about.
Hey, that's why I personally love Bumble. It encourages women to start the conversation, initiate things first.
For the reason that you like it is the reason that I don't like it.
Really?
Because it puts the onus back on them. And because they can sit there, but it's still in the back of their head or in the back of their mind. They're like, if I start this conversation, they're going to think I'm desperate. If I start this conversation, they're going to think that message is still on a loop. And until we can get that message away and make it okay as a society, Bumble would actually work a lot better.
Well, I would actually disagree only in the sense that there's this really famous interview with Morgan Freeman where they ask him dating advice, which is weird because he's an actor and I don't know exactly what his relationship status is, but it was an interview with Morgan Freeman and they asked him for advice about just dating in general. And he said, let the women chase you. Now, that might sound really demeaning towards women, but I personally think that there's a lot of evidence to go show this and a lot of experience that a lot of dating coaches can say. But I think women prefer to chase that high value, high status guy a little bit more than like the guys begging to have them. I know it's a little bit of an ego boost to have a guy who's like panting over you and begging for your approval and mating and stuff like that. But I think there's a little bit more incentive to try and go for that high value guy that might be slightly out of your league, you know, even though it seems rude to say there's like leagues amongst men and women, right? I think it's sometimes rude to say, oh, this person's a 6 out of 10, this, you know, a 10 out of 10, whatever. Yeah. But I think there is some psychology behind that too, that women do prefer a little bit to chase after the guy versus have guys chasing after them.
To a degree, I would say it kind of goes half and half. If she can feel like she's chasing after him, and then the roles reverse, and he can actually do a little bit of the chasing, because if she's doing all the chasing, then he's actually going to get bored. But if he's doing all the chasing, then eventually she gets bored. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like going after those really high-powered, the female CEOs.
Right.
And I really don't believe in leagues. It's pretty much, I think if you're a person and you are not like the most popular person in the world, and then now you're going to go date a famous actress. Okay, you're not used to that lifestyle. Yeah, league-wise, they're out of your league because you don't know everything that comes with their life. So if you can't handle it, then it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm. I remember I listened to one of your guys' podcasts about those MGTOW incels. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to sound like those guys, but there was this interesting term out there that's actually used in the book at Sex at Dawn, talking about the hierarchy of status among men and women. And they use this term, it's pronounced, I believe, hypergamy or hypergamy, depending on which way you look at it. But basically, all it's trying to describe is that men will generally date across and under, and of course they would love to get the women that are above their social status and genetic quality, but generally speaking, they could only get the women that were equal or lower, while women always try to prefer to shoot up towards the top 20%, just simply out of that same idea we've been going over and over, which is that the top 20% of men had the best genetics, and women could only get pregnant by one man at a time for such a long period of 9 months. So they needed to choose the best partner. So like I said, it's not blanket stating all women that in modern society that women can't choose a guy who is, you know, equal or lower or higher. It's just a general trend of psychology from the last few thousand years of, you know, I said 290,000 years of human history is influencing our subconscious, and our modern society is arguably, you know, industrial revolution was only late 1800s, and then the modern technological era is post World War II. So these societal influences of today are less strong than I would say the 290,000 plus years of evolutionary psychology that's influencing us. So it's not to say that you can't go outside of our biological and psychological impulses, but just that those do have such a heavy influence on men and women.
Yeah,
I agree. I'd agree with that. I definitely agree with the idea of, especially when you said, you know, we have 250,000 years or so influencing our biology and our sociology and all of those things. But I don't think, honestly, I think nowadays when it comes to men kind of going, you know, below and women going above, honestly, I think that's just it got to a point where men just stopped being picky and wanted to get laid. But I think when it comes to choosing a partner, both sexes actually probably put some real thought. Well, no, that's bullshit because we've all seen crazy couples. But I mean, when you seriously want to choose a partner, you seriously want someone to love and to be loved with. You know, you do not necessarily look for, like I said, you don't necessarily look for what they look like. It's more about what they are on the inside, and if you see the person has the potential to grow with you, and if they're good looking, it helps.
Well, actually, that's a really interesting point. That's one thing I wanted to touch on before we close, is just that they mentioned this at Sex and Dawn, that our ancient ancestors, even if you could arguably say even the last only maybe 100 or 200 years, we weren't struggling for our survival, but for like 99.9% of human history, we were struggling just for daily survival. And they did not have the luxury to find a long-term partner based on the compatibility of their personalities, that they simply had to choose based on genetics. Because they're struggling for survival, they couldn't have these relationships where they're like, oh, we have similar interests. Did you also listen to Post Malone? Do you also, love going out for walks? Their whole life was just survival.
That's what I call the romantic marriage or the romantic relationship. It really didn't come into play until around the late 1800s. Before that, everything was pretty much arranged. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't a whole lot of travel. So really, if you lived let's say in the 1800s, you lived in New York, well, you had more selection. But if you lived in rural Nebraska and with a population of 20, well, guess what? That's your pool of people to choose from. Mm-hmm. And now we're worldwide. Within 12 hours, I could be in another country across the Pacific Ocean. So the amount of selection that we now have is
huge.
That is huge. Really, within just a couple of hours, I can be in a major metropolitan city with over 1 million people, where currently where I'm at, I have roughly 56,000. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
that kind of changed really changed the dynamics.
Yeah, social media and dating apps have completely changed the dating field. And
airplanes and women in business, everything that has changed, to where it's like an advancement in technology of any technology in any sort of fashion has really changed the way that we date. I mean, you can video chat with people now. You don't even have to meet someone to date them. That's wild. And for some people, that shit works. Like, when we really get down to it, long-distance relationships can work, and then they meet each other and they get married, or they can go really wrong because you're being catfished. Either way, what I'm saying is, no matter what, whatever. So let's say tomorrow we invent the thing where you can dial out with your brain. It's going to change the way people date. You know what I mean? Like, any advancement in technology, any advancement in society at all is going to change the way we view our mates and the way that we go about dating.
More things advance, and the more people become less scared to actually step out and let themselves just be. I mean, you don't have moving up and dating in an upper social class. That's I can't tell you how many rom-com movies I've seen about that. What was that? Last Christmas, it was all over the place. The Prince and Me. Little Susie Nobody in the Bronx, New York, falls in love, or the prince in another country falls in love with her, and then they have kids and everything else. There's the social class uptick. There's the rapper music star wants to break away and get away from it all and just have a break, and falls in love with so-and-so from little town nowhere. I mean, it's all over the place.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like in modern day, because we have all these awesome luxuries, like, being able to order takeout on our phone and chill out and watch Netflix, and all these awesome things that we have has made us a little bit like almost, we're too cushioned out and everything. Spoiled. And here's the thing. I feel like even our grandparents' generation, if they saw a flaw in their partner, they would rather work on it and not be so picky. And like, let's face it, I'm sure we can all relate to this. We've all had fights with our exes over the most petty shit. I don't know if we're allowed to swear, but
I do it all the time.
We have petty fights with our significant others. And I feel like there was less of that even just 3 generations ago, because I think our modern day, we've just become so spoiled.
Well, that and the amount of we become much closer, and things become more condensed compared to our grandparents' days. They were much more spread out, and
you had to travel to learn. Now you can just Google.
Yeah, now you can just if you wanted to go learn something, you went to this strange building called the library and got this thing. It's called a book with actual paper in it. Yeah.
Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah, you actually had to learn how to actually go and find that book. But now we can just
had to learn that too as kids. Okay, we had to learn. I never used it. I didn't even understand it because everything was just in alphabetical order anyway. So you just kind of find it.
But nowadays, you don't even have to type it in. You can just ask, and you get the answer.
Everything's at your fingertips. It's awesome, but like, I think it sucks for the people who grow up in it because they don't understand the idea that like sometimes you gotta work for things. Even when we talk about dating, you know, so you ask, you get it.
Well, we talked about that the other day.
Terribly.
We talked about that the other day. More people put more thought into what kind of phone or television they want, compared to the type of person they want to spend the rest of their life with.
But it's not only that. Actually, human communication between people, whether it's a partner, business person, whatever, actually, a lot of it we don't realize is it has to be in person. So you guys know maybe you've fought with your significant other in the past over a text message or something they said over the phone. You have to be able to communicate in person to have a healthy relationship because a lot of it has to do with body language. We communicate with facial expressions, vocal tonality. These are all things you can't do over a Bumble app, Tinder, text message. So relationships back then were stronger because everything was more in person. And that's why we're seeing people today don't have strong friendships with people, strong relationships with their family because too much of it is over technology.
And actually, that's one of the reasons why the dating apps, and we actually covered this, I think it was in February, there was an 11% drop across the board and people are starting to delete the apps because, one, they really don't work. Two, way too much gamification. And the relationships that they are developing are extremely short term. There's very few that actually turn into real marriages that last beyond 3 to 5 years.
That's because you have to do the work. People aren't willing to do the fucking work.
No, it's and that's her warranty is up. It's time. I want an upgrade.
Exactly. If you meet somebody that you like and it doesn't work out, obviously with, withholding, let's talk about let's say, let's get away from abuse and all of those things. If things don't work out, it's because you guys weren't fucking trying. You can work just about anything out. And you guys know that I always hold that. If communication is an issue, sit the fuck down and talk. If fidelity is an issue, sit the fuck down and talk. If abuse is an issue, get the fuck out of there. But if it's things that are tangible that can be fixed, don't just give up on them. Do the fucking work.
And that's what a lot of people do now.
Yeah, don't communicate over the phone about it.
A lot of people, they don't even, it's just like, oh, one fight, I'm out. And that is, I don't know where that came from, but it's
I think it's human population, honestly, too, right?
Well, some people out there, like myself, I have the mentality of abundance. It doesn't matter. I can always get more. If this doesn't work out, there's always another. I just don't quit. And some people, when they try too hard because they don't know, oh, this is all I've got, so I'm going to hang on to it. I'm never going to let it go. And they just squeeze the life out of it. And if they're not communicating and they don't know how they actually handle fights or disagreements themselves, like I know myself, I need to back away. Otherwise, I'm going to dig my heels in and we're not going to make any headroom. I will win the fight, be the last warrior on the field. But if I can step away and I can think about it, and then I can, okay, oh, yeah, this is where I fucked up. Then I can come back and I can actually resolve the issue. If she's one of those that actually we have to nail it down, we have to work this out right now, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, if you were a young man or a young woman in a small town before the days of phones and internet and communication through technology, you had to work on those relationships that you had there within your small town, right? You couldn't, you had to make things work with the dating pool that you had. You couldn't just be like, oh, well, Susie was rude to me the other day, so I'm just going to go find another girl. Like, you wanted to make that relationship work because it was basically some of your only options, right?
Right. And getting divorced was frowned upon, so, you kind of couldn't. But I guess that's really what it comes down to, guys. But we do have to wrap this up because I do have to work soon. I would like to money, at least sleep a little bit, but I don't think I have time to sleep. But either way, let's wrap this up real quick.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me on. It's awesome talk so far.
Yeah, we're trying to work on getting a scheduler because my schedule is absolutely insane. And when I do go back to work, it's going to become even worse. Like I said, we're not the end-all be-all as far as any kind of dating or relationship things.
Yeah, neither am I, guys.
For some people, I can get them 100% of the way there, and the clouds open up with rainbows and starts raining chocolates and rose petals. For other people, I might be able to only get them 50% of the way there, or at least point them in the right direction. But having guests on, like David, what he has to offer, what his expertise in, or what he has studied, that could be the other 20% that actually gets you over the hump and makes everything kind of like clicks into place.
Right.
That's why we enjoy having guests.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's situation is uniquely different, so everyone can kind of add a different angle. And even if you give certain advice, it might only apply to certain areas of their dating life and marriage and everything. So, it's just like taking things piece by piece and building your own puzzle out of life, right?
Everybody is unique.
Yep.
Everybody has different life experiences, and that's one of the things that I like about working with Ashley is that we are so different. We come from two completely different realms. And,
you guys are like completely different day and night.
Yeah, and her opinions help open up my eyes to different things, and we can go back and forth, but at the end of the day, we both realize we're both human, and from there, so long as we're not hurting other people, it really doesn't matter. Go seek your own happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one last thing I'd like to add is just make sure you get different perspectives from even people who you might disagree with, because I think right now what we're seeing in modern society is there's not open communication and open debate as much as there used to be. I think it's really important to hear so many different people's opinions about this, about that, and kind of take everything with a grain of salt and then use your own intelligence to kind of build the picture of the world that you think looks right.
Yep.
And know who you are. Like where I come from, I had no less than probably 7, 8. I would say I had 3 people that really seriously influenced my vision and my view on dating. And then the others, they kind of rounded it out. And I was like, oh, so that's why it's not working. And one of them, I'm serious, I really can't stand him. The guy drives me absolutely nuts. But again, I have to give him credit. He is a very intelligent person. We would never sit down and have over a beer, but I'll sit in the audience and listen to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for having me on, guys. This has been an awesome conversation.
Of course, man.
Yeah, not a problem.
It was wonderful.
Yeah. If you want to be on the show, just make sure to go out to girlsaskguysshow.com. Hit the 3 little buttons up in the upper left-hand corner. You get the drop-down list, and it says contact right there. And in there, you can put in your name, address. Let us know if you want to be on the show, if you have a topic for the show, or if you just have a question you want us to answer for you. Very simple. We try and keep it as easy as possible.
Yeah, it was real easy for me, guys. So if you want to be on the show, it's just a really quick 1-page little form, few things of information.
Yeah, and we always try and get back as quickly as possible. It's either going to be myself or Ashley. We're going to try and get back as quickly as possible. Even if you want to hit us up on Instagram, you can hit us up on there as well.
Yep.
So,
and like I said, you'll always know if it's me or if it's John. I'll give you like 2 words like, thanks, man. And John will give you like full detail. So you'll always know.
So with that, like, rate, subscribe. Go out, check out our merchandise. We are working on trying to get out some more stuff. We're just really backed up with our course right now. Trying to get that out for you. But like, rate, subscribe, follow us, comment, do all that great stuff. And with that, we will talk to you on the next one.
See you guys.
That's all for this episode of the Girls Ask Guys show, where all of us learn to master this thing called life together. For more answers to your questions on life and love, be sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode. And head to girlsaskguysshow.com to submit your questions for a future episode or apply to be a guest on the show. Good luck out there, and we'll catch you next time, right here on the Girls Ask Guys show.